I think we'd like to start with some opening statements from Kathy and Sue, and then we'll open up to general questions, including Jerry as well. So, Kathy, Harris Farm has been mentioned a few times today and yesterday as an innovator in the retail space. One of the I'm going to throw you right in and say one of the names that has been bandied around too is Amazon. So I'm interested to see how Harris Farm is preparing themselves for this impending disruption and the future ahead.
Yes, it's interesting. We all look at Amazon with a little bit of fear and trepidation, but in fact, when you analyse the numbers in America, they're huge because it is huge, but as a proportion of the actual retail landscape in America, it's not that huge. But I think the three big trends that we're seeing in retail is experience, convenience, and price. And it's sort of quite polarised into those three groups. And of course, Amazon comes right into the convenience area. And so, as a retailer, you have got to really choose, probably, which of the three you're going to go into. But the consumer actually demands all three, but you need to specialise in one of the three. So, for example, price, competing on price, is something that for ordinary goods, people are out there, they don't care. They can get it online. They know what this store is selling, that store is selling. There's some products that fall into that. There's other products, for example, food, that I think is heavily into the experience, because everything about food is experience. The cooking it is experience, the shopping for it can be an experience, and it's a good one. But by the same token, convenience is important. So Amazon is a huge area. So what are we doing preparing for that? We have got already a quite strong online business, but we see online is just part of the customer service. We don't see it as a separate business. It's just like most people will go and do their shopping regularly and then, oh my God, I've got such a busy weekend, I'll do an online order. So I think that's going to be really important, the online ordering. And that's got huge implications for us in the fish, delivering fish, about health and safety, cool chain, all of those things.
Thank you. And Sue, I think Amazon, but also adding that extra other name as well of Uber that has been bandied around, and you've had a lot of experience with that.
Look, I think disruption really has been part of our industry forever. I mean, I'm going to say that. There's probably many of us in the room who've lived, decades and decades of this industry. This is just another layer of it, and it just comes in a different form. And when you have, organisations like Uber who, are out there as within the taxi element of the industry, are the largest taxi driving company in the world, but they don't own a single vehicle. And when you think about now the fact that they are the largest restaurant chain in the world, but they don't own a single restaurant, it just says that in so many ways, there's another piece that I would add to what Kathy has said, and that is about understanding, where you fit within the model and whether or not you're actually also a logistics company. And for those sorts of organisations, their specialisation is about logistics. They're not about delivering convenience necessarily just because it goes from point A to point B efficiently. They actually need their suppliers within their supply chain to be able to help them to do that, to couple that with the right product, with the right experience. So I think it's about a coming together of every element of what the customer expects. And I think innovation, I'll just sort of leverage off the conversation that Jerry's had before, innovation versus improvement. Innovation through the lens of the organisation alone actually may be limited in its effectiveness, and I think innovation through the lens of the customer is about the only way that we win in this industry at the moment.
Fantastic. We talk often about picking up on what Jerry was saying about the employees having a lot of input into the innovation in a business. I think something that a lot of people in this room and we all deal with is the concept of generational change. So we do have a question about how do we interact with the different generations in our business and bring up those ideas. So Jerry, do you have a comment with that we could put to the panel?
Not necessarily on generational change within an organisation, but generations different generational sort of spending habits have been an interest for me. I think there's always that view that if you're young, you're online, and if you're older, then you want to go into the store. That's not really entirely true. There is definitely a preference for in-store if you're older, and I'll take 50 as a cut-off for you here, and a preference, but that preference remains when you're younger. It's just that you're using online gets more when you're younger too. So I don't think there's I think the store, to your point, Catherine, the store and online does need to work together, and not just assume that it's for a younger generation, but assume that everybody wants to interact with a company in a different, in a way that suits them, and that might be online, it might be in store, it might be online today and in store tomorrow. It doesn't matter.
It's quite interesting because, sometimes I think everything that's old again is new again. Like, really, when you think about it, how different is online to when I was a kid and you couldn't get to the grocery store and you'd ring up Sam and say, Sam, I can't get there, can you put a box of stuff together for me and deliver it to my house? It's just technology that's changed. So, and being consumer focused.
Could I just talk a little to the generational piece around millennials, really, in that market, not necessarily from the consumer interface, but actually at the back end of your business? And is there a difference between the way that we can run businesses with a millennial generation versus others when we're trying to be innovative and get everybody on the same page to drive innovation and change? And I think that every generation and all of us have the capacity to be creative in our thoughts and to be innovative in the way that we want to do business. But I think what we have is a generation who feel entitled to have the opportunity to make a difference and to think differently, and that as they join our organisations, they're sort of demanding that because that's their normal way of doing things. And I think that's where our greatest opportunity can come from. Is not necessarily pigeonholing just one group by age into those that are going to be the drivers of the digital change, but it's actually everybody's capacity to be able to think in new and interesting ways about how it is that we solve complex problems with different thinking, because that's essentially what a younger generation has been taught is allowed within their schooling system. And I think it's pretty healthy for our next age and evolution of where our businesses are going.
Fantastic. There's some questions coming in around technology. We've heard a lot in the last, yesterday and today, about technology, robotics, artificial intelligence, all these kind of things. There's a question around when you know it's the right time to adopt these technologies and how they can improve innovation in your business. Kathy?
Do you know, it's quite interesting. We did do a lot of innovation right at the beginning, and when David and I first sort of came out, we went to uni and it was unusual in the industry, and we came out, we thought we were so smart because, we'd been to university and we knew all about computers, and we saw all this stuff. We saw a lot in America, and we worked with IBM, and we were actually the first in the world to tie up how you put your lemons on the scales, and that goes into your point of sale unit, and then all the data would be collected and sent to the computers. And so we were really so focused on all those innovations, and it was fabulous, really helped our industry. We knew exactly what we were selling. Coles and Woolworths didn't have it. It was we went broke in that one of those downturns, like we were so focused on some of these things that we forgot the most important thing, and that was the product. Like, it's great to know how many lemons you're selling, but are they the best lemons? So, that technology piece, it's terribly important, but you should never lose sight of what is your business. And I think that's that balance of getting that right. So, same with I remember going into the online business. I was very keen to get into online in the turn of the century. Turn of the century, my God, that sounds so bad. Anyway, and I remember David saying, he said, how can you make money when you go into the shop and pick it, You run, you drive to Dover Heights, you drive up 20 flights of stairs, run up 20 stairs, you realise you've left the tomatoes by home, how can you make business? And thank God at that time we didn't go online, because we ended up doing supply with a lot of companies, they all went broke. So it's just really be careful, take it. You've got to be innovative, you've got to be out there, you've got to be aware of it, but you've got to take it in your stride.
Thank you. Jerry?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure who said it, but the quote was, change doesn't happen quickly until it does, and you don't know when that's going to be. So I think the important part, and I touched on it in the presentation, was really to run some test and learn. So one of the things that I know I've been waiting to take off for a little while perhaps has been beacons. They were put out there a couple of years back as being the saviour of everything, and they actually, to me, haven't taken off as much as they might have done. We're looking at drone delivery now. I think touching on those, being across those, running sort of test and learns on those, it being ready for when that upturn does happen for them is important.
Sue?
Yeah, my thoughts on this are, I think technology fits into an organisation appropriately, and it's important to invest and make that change when it solves the right problem. And it's not when you look at the breadth of your different competitors and go, they're using it, so therefore we should. It should be about, I think, probably trying to solve the problems that are really going on within your own organisation and understanding what those problems are, and picking the right challenges to solve. And, I take a little of what Roz said earlier, you'll get really nowhere by solving one problem at a time, but when you really understand the complexities of your business and the challenges that are there, and sometimes how they all map together, you might just find that technology embedded at the right point allows you to solve multiple problems by feeding information in the right direction to get a new outcome.
Fantastic. And I'll pick up on a point there. We're talking about risk and learning curves, and I know particularly in our business we sometimes feel that the learning curve never stops, and there's a cost involved in that. So Sue, I'll start back with you and we'll go back down the panel. As a small business person, as a medium-sized business person, how do you balance risk and the effect on your business to move to a position where you try and take the fear of risk out of your culture?
Yeah. I think this is sort of timely actually, because I've just spent a day this week working with an organisation, and their turnover is about $20 million, so you kind of go, good, should be able to make some money out of that. They're not making money out of that. And we ran a creative profit challenge for them, and it was all about getting people to stop focusing on the fear of going broke and start focusing on the opportunity that there is, the tipping scale between the point of making nothing and the point of making a whole lot. And I sort of think that culture starts from the top, and it's about giving people permission to think differently. And if they're not scared to suggest something that's different, if they're not going to be shot down for the thinking and promoting something that's different, then you will get the best out of every bright mind that you employ. But if you are, as a leader of an organisation, someone who hears something and finds the problem with that in rather than the opportunity that might be sitting within that, then I think you limit it. And not every idea should ever float through to be something that's implemented. It's about capturing the ideas and capturing the enthusiasm of the talent, because technology is actually just an enabler, but businesses are all about people. And I think the original bright ideas come from people. So we have to take the fear and the risk out of having opinions and ideas and ways of making them feel like they're connected to opportunity in a business, and make that a new norm or a norm so that you get the best out of them.
And Kathy, how do you feel risk is in your culture?
Do you know, it's so funny, when I was coming here today, I said to Dave, it's really nice going to speak to people in the fish industry. They know what it's like to really work hard. And they know what it's like being family businesses. And a lot of people don't realise just how jolly hard it is. It's, I know everybody in the room will know, it's 24/7. We're dealing with products that can go off like that. We've got people's health and safety in our responsibility. But that is also an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity because we really have an opportunity to do it well for all of us in the room. But it also means that sitting around your tables or your boardroom or whatever you have it, is you've got a lot of thinking going back generations. So you've got the young coming up with these ideas, fabulous ideas, and if there's a really good culture in these family business, then there's an ability to discuss it. You know, you've got old heads that come in and go, well, you know, I see what my kids call my husband the seagull, because he sort of, you know, hovers around and he goes, whoa, shit. But, you know, that is a huge opportunity, a very practical way of sort of getting these great ideas, listening to the young, what they're saying about it, then having the older heads on it going, well, have you thought about this? So I think, you know, we really have an ability to do both and to do it steadily in most of our businesses.
Fantastic. Jerry's
I think it's important as well to have a mechanism that allows you to do that thing, effectively get ideas from your teams and then lift that up and decide which ones you're going to work on. And we started off quite some time ago now with sort of an online ideas generation thing, and I think that's where a lot of people start. But what we found was we were getting lots of ideas, some, you know, that were great, some that might be great if we drilled into them a bit longer. It can become a bit of an industry in itself. So we found other mechanisms now that help the sort of the cream of the ideas to rise to the top. Now, one of those is a thing we call Canapult, which is just a can of information that says, hey, great idea, off you go. Give it a crack, see what you can do with it. And it includes all sorts of tools to help you with UX testing and so on, the way that you frame your idea. And equally, we have a sort of an internal Shark Tank idea, the entrepreneur as well, which allows people to work up an idea that they really think is good, get friends together who also think it's a good idea, and then put that to a senior board to see if that's worth it. And I think that way you get over that idea of people putting in lots of ideas into an online thing that never comes back, it never bounces back, and that sort of dampens down the enthusiasm that they first started off with. Because if you have a great idea or something you think is great, it goes into the ether and doesn't echo back, then really why would you do it again? So having those mechanisms that aren't just a sort of a senior board looking at it all the time is, I think, the right thing to do.
There's just one other thing I'd like to say. Another extra thing that was really helpful is to have the geek sitting around too. So you've got some geeky kid who is really into the data. And so you're watching the data all the time. You actually have the facts. It's not all our instincts sitting around the table. They can actually see the numbers. So they're really important to listen to those guys too, to have somebody who's analysing your numbers. I'm sure that's why we lost it in the 80s when it went down. We just weren't keeping it close enough eye on, you know, our sales versus our expenses, and have the geek there too.
Sue, final comments?
Yeah, my final comment on that, and it fits exactly with what we've just sort of discussed there, is to have a balance in your teams. That, you know, the first thing that we really need to do is to have someone who can clarify the problems, and some of us are better at it than others. Then you need a group of people who get a lot of energy from bringing really novel, unique and different ideas, and sometimes really steady ideas, in to solve that problem. But then you need the person who's unbelievable at developing up a plan that keeps everyone honest and gets something done, because otherwise it just becomes this fluid out there thing. And then you need the bunch of people who are driven about being the implementers, who make it actually turn into a thing, not just something that sat round as an idea, was generated as a discussion and did its loops and loops, but actually never returned a yield on the effort that was put in for it. So that would be the way I'd think of it. And, you know, there's actually some pretty simple testing that you can do on your teams to identify who's strong at what, and that probably is some of the best insights that you can get. It's not about age, it's about diversity of thought.
Fantastic. It's criminal to say this because I think we could probably talk for hours, and I have another 100 questions, and we are moving into morning tea after this, so if you'd like to join us. Oh, Brian. All right, morning tea's been cancelled. Brian Skepper.
Look, my question is more about, and I think, for Catherine, what you've done is about the culture of collaboration that seems to be emerging at the moment. We're in an industry, and I'm sure your industry was the same, where we compete like hell with one another. And to ask one another to collaborate so that we're both better off, nobody wants to talk about it. We're trying to do a development at Sydney Fish Market. We had a workshop with our tenants, and asking them for ideas and input. The number one idea was no more new tenants. How do you overcome that? And your concept of co-opetition, I think it is, which I really like.
I will allow Kathy to answer that because it's a great question. Otherwise, I was going to be a Tony Jones and take it as a comment. Kathy, would you like to comment?
Collaboration, I mean, it is now, for example, we saw these terrific individual retailers doing a fantastic job, and we thought, well, we can't compete with them. Well, let's get them inside. Let's get them into our businesses. And Veronica's one example. I mean, and it works really well. But it goes more than just collaborating. For example, we have made our three sons joint CEOs, and everybody said that is impossible. You know, they used to fight like cats and dogs when they were kids, I can't tell you. And one of the things we did do was that we got a guy, Wayne Pearce, I don't know if any of you are into rugby league, but, you know, Wayne Pearce came in and he did this. He was amazing at everybody sitting down, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what does that mean against the others? And these three kids now work together. They don't agree on everything by any means, but it's all about collaboration. You're absolutely right. It's sort of like if we all get together, we all win. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand this really strict competition thing that some of our competitors who will remain unnamed, you know...
Names to be supplied later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. As I said, I wish we had a lot more time for this, and please join us for afternoon tea. I'd like, on behalf of Seafood Directions, to thank our speakers. It's a fantastic panel.